before we move on to this week's Xfinity race, Brandon, since you were not on wrap-up last night, it was a late wrap-up, certainly an unusual wrap-up show. Quintuple overtime in the Cup Series, your home race, Nashville Superspeedway.
Thanks.
Do you have any brief thoughts, or you want to give a reaction to the insanity that we saw? Ironically, we'll keep Joey Logano in the news for this show here. He less than 24 hours ago, taking the checkered flag, somehow, some way, finding a way to save enough fuel at the end there. Zane Smith nearly pulling off one of the biggest upsets we've seen in recent Cup memory. What was your reaction to the chaos and quintuple overtime finish that we saw?
Yeah, I didn't realize that it was actually 5 overtimes, the quintuple mark, which NASCAR was very proud to put out on X and all their social media platforms. A new record has been added to the history books. 5 overtimes, most in NASCAR Cup Series history. There's some stats that you may not want to be so proud of, but I can't blame them for using they've got a stat, they need to use it, and this is the path they've chosen. They need to market it as such. And some people prefer watching the game of, oh man, is my driver gonna lose his fuel gauge before the end of the race? Can he make it to the end? And just having a mess after a mess after a mess 5 times over until we finally got the superb fuel economy that is Team Penske, and getting Joey Logano to get into the playoff picture. Some people enjoy that, and I'm not gonna tell you that you're not allowed to enjoy that as a NASCAR fan if that's your thing. And I can see the token of that, where that this in reality was much better than for a fan being there than maybe just coming across the line with a yellow, like, all right, well, that's it, gigs up, go home. I know I'm setting off a fire here, but you've probably already let that flame fly last night, I hope. So hopefully there's no more bullets for me, right?
It was, well, yeah, I mean, I'm glad we didn't go on the air right after the finish, and I'm glad that obviously it's a bit of a conflict of interest for Kobe to talk NASCAR these days, so it was just me on the wrap-up show giving my thoughts. Didn't have anybody to bounce off of, and so I just went through a quick brief recap and rundown, and didn't have the opportunity to get as animated as I maybe would have liked to. And now that it's been almost 24 hours, I won't do that here either. But I will say this: if this is not vindication, if this is not the catalyst for people recognizing that maybe unlimited attempts is pure insanity, then I don't know what is. Now, I know that this is a new record. I know that this doesn't happen every week. I understand that most of the time we rarely go past double overtime. But it clearly, and when you're running into fuel mileage problems, we saw it with Larson running out, stacking the field up, Kyle Busch getting taken out in a crash. But why was Kyle Busch allowed to regain all those positions that he lost on whatever it was, the first overtime? There were 5 overtime finishes and restarts to keep track of, so forgive me if I'm messing the order up slightly here, but Busch was allowed to get all his spots back, which I credit to Jeff Burton in the booth for calling that out, because that was, I appreciate.
And if he won the race, it'd be irate.
Oh yeah. I appreciate that Burton was, didn't feel the need to stifle his true thoughts and opinions there, and that he was willing to tell it like it was, because it was ridiculous. I don't understand. I mean, Kyle Busch is going to take it, I'm sure. It's been a difficult stretch for him. Now, fortunately, for the integrity of the results, it didn't matter, because he got caught up in another wreck anyway. But you had that happen. You almost had the lowest ranked full-time driver in points, maybe the lowest ranked chartered car in owners points. I don't know if that's true off the top of my head. I know it's certainly down there, the 15 and 16 using a rotation of drivers. But I mean, talk about throwing, a major wrench into the playoff picture, because when Justin Haley stole that win at Daytona all those years ago, you still have a top 30 rule. So obviously Haley wasn't running for Cup points. That wasn't an issue. But Spire, Bob Pockrass was updating every week, like, how close is that 77 to 30th place in the Owners' Championship? Because that would have, again, I'm thankful. I love the underdogs as much as anybody, but Zane Smith, with how he's running this year, no disrespect, but I think that would have just been a waste of a playoff spot too, given what got us there. And I don't know. I mean, I feel like, and I've talked to fans that I disagree with on this about these issues here. I know that we're in a new era. We're never going back to Bob Lafford's Winston Cup point system. We're never going back to a full season championship points format in all likelihood. But I would be willing to compromise if the option was keep it how we have it now or go back to 2004 to 2013. I'm taking the latter of those every time. I understand that today's fans, a fan born in 2004 doesn't know any different. We've had some sort of green, white, checker or overtime rule or regulation in place throughout all three series for 20 years now. I understand that the fans of today more than ever want green flag finishes at all realistic and reasonable cost here. But you cannot allow something like this to be a possibility because it's just absolute insanity. And it racks up the repair bills for these teams as well. I mean, how many torn up race cars did we go through in the extra 30 plus laps, 40 plus miles that we added onto the race distance there? Just not a fan of it. So I would have no problem saying, it's the insert your company name here, 300 or 400, and that's where we're ending it. Period, end of story, no matter what the circumstances are. But I would be willing to compromise and say you get one attempt. And if you cannot, if the so-called 40 best drivers in the world cannot finish the race in more than one attempt, then too bad. I'm sorry. Races end under caution sometimes. That was what was so ironic, to your point, Brandon, about them posting that graphic. NASCAR always loves this, and no disrespect to whoever's the social admin behind that, because I'm sure that whoever that person is, they have a job. They're being told to post this or post that. And so it's not an attack on them at all. Don't go, crying to the social admin. But the fact that somebody at NASCAR was willing to say, hey, look, we had the best drivers in the world. So anyway, we set a new record last night because said best drivers in the world couldn't complete one green flag lap until the 5th attempt at the end of the race. So I don't know.
I think a caveat needs to be put there. The best drivers in the world at the stock car discipline.
Well, that's true.
They don't say that because they don't need to. They're NASCAR. They can just say the best drivers in the world to sell their product. But we know it's the best stock car discipline drivers in the world. And really the best stock car drivers in the world get kind of put in a box whenever you give them a chance to steal the race and fan it out 5 wide. I mean, what do you expect to happen? We to get to 5 overtimes, it's not that hard to believe because, I mean, you're gonna put they see open track in front of them, they're gonna take it every single time because that's their job on the line. That's a playoff spot on the line. They're always gonna take it, and you put them in a box like that. Even iRacing knows on their official races, you only get 2 chances at an overtime finish. If you can't do 2 attempts, that's it. We're going to tug you to the yellow.
Yeah. I mean,
that's an official simulation of iRacing, by the way.
And think about
of NASCAR.
Yes, and if iRacing, sorry guys, a video game, it's not real. It's a simulation.
Yeah.
It is by definition a game over video format. If they are saying we're not going to put up with more than 2 of these, then, a series that has real life financial implications for these teams, if they wreck their race cars or if they tear stuff up, I don't like it. I don't like the idea of unlimited attempts. I think 1 attempt is more than good enough. Fans should be grateful that they're getting that because it didn't used to be that way. So you want to get a green flag finish, we'll try for you 1 time. And if they can't do that, then don't be mad at the sanctioning body. Be mad at the best drivers in the world for not being able to behave enough to at least get to the white flag. I mean, because that's the thing. It's not like, we got to run 2 laps. They couldn't even get to the white flag. I mean, all they have to do is take the white, and then it's an official attempt, and that's it. They couldn't even get 1 lap in.
They were so close at one time. They were so close to getting to the white.
They were, yeah.